I'm going to extend the theme of my last video, managing projects as a solo developer, into creating good user stories. Personally, I feel more reassured and can clear my mind a bit if I know that I don't have to keep all that information in my head. Oddly enough, it makes the process more fun for me. I have no idea why that is, but it does seem to be that way. At the end of the video, I'll create a few user stories from the requirements in my last video. If you haven't watched that one, I'll put a card up on the screen so you can watch it if you want. The most prominent aspect of a good user story is a good title, and good titles follow a fill-in-the-blank style. As a blank, I want to blank, so that blank. The first blank is for the user persona. Which type of user in your system does this story represent? This could be a specific user or a specific role. Never write user stories from the perspective of the system or a user or a group of users that are external to the system, like the owner or the team. The second blank is the goal. What is it that you want to accomplish? This needs to be really specific and it needs to be measurable. And the third blank is the payoff. What benefit will the user persona gain when this work is implemented? This also needs to be really clear and concise. Doing so will help the developer understand what's on the line and can make prioritizing the story a little bit easier. Here's a few examples of a decent user story title. As a registered user, I want to add ideas to the system so I have a central location to manage related information. As an anonymous user, I want to register for an account so I can have access to the system. As an admin user, I want to delete inactive user accounts to maintain a healthy system. If you're a solo developer going through this process, trying to get really specific and spelling out everything can seem like a real time waster, but it isn't. If your project is ever a success and anyone else ever needs to work on this system or understand the business justification of why something was done the way it was done, a good user story can tell an important but altogether different story. It can also help the solo developer that never hands it off to anyone, because 6 months down the road, when you're trying to remember why on earth you made these decisions that you made, this process can help recall a lot. That's the story it tells. It tells why the system was designed and developed the way that it was. And the value of that, man, it could be immeasurable. The decision to write good user stories can't be decided after the fact, though. It has to be done up front before you get started developing. The second crucial aspect of a good user story is clear, complete, and concise acceptance criteria. Say everything with as few words as possible to deliver the message. Give the developer clear and testable conditions that act as a series of guidelines so that it's obvious when the story is done. I find it useful to know exactly what's expected when the, perfect happy path is followed using what I'm developing. And also, it is useful to know the edge cases. What happens if everything isn't perfect? What does that path look like? Well-written acceptance criterion contain appropriate language. Words like might, may, probably, and other vague words should never appear in acceptance criteria. When the criteria are tested, the result needs to be a pass or fail with nothing in between. And you should include as many acceptance criteria that you find necessary to ensure that the story implementation was completed successfully. I find acceptance criteria to be really useful when I'm writing unit tests. I know what my test should be testing. Here are a couple of simple examples. Users can set min, max, or both values. Filters persist when navigating between different search results pages. Invalid user input shows appropriate error messages. The third important aspect of a good user story is deliverability. The user story needs to be small enough to be delivered in a single iteration. Make the story as small as possible to complete a single piece of functionality, but independent enough to be developed and tested in isolation when possible. When possible is key there. This is not always, a given. Sometimes things just commingle too much to be implemented in a silo. There's also several things that user stories should never include. Those mainly include technical implementation details like which programming language to use or how to implement something. User interface specifications, that's for a totally different process, and business logic that users don't see. Also, never have multiple user journeys in a single story. Each user journey should have its own story. If you include multiple user journeys, then it complicates testing enormously, and I think testers have enough to worry about already. Now let's create some user stories. I'll create 2 from my first 2 idea management bullet points, list and create. I'm going to do this in Notion, but this process should be pretty similar in any board-based project management system like Trello or Asana. The only major difference will probably be where you put the acceptance criteria. So I'll paste in the 3 blanks text to get started. As a registered user, I want to view all my ideas on a single page, so I have a central location to manage related information. Next, in the open area below comments, I'll hit backslash and add a heading 3 with the text acceptance criteria. And then I'll hit backslash again and type list and select the task list option. You can do this however you want, but I like this one because if I do have to move something back to rework, I can uncheck which acceptance criteria is causing the issue without having to spell it out unless, there's some real depth to the reason that needs an explanation. The types of things that should be covered in the acceptance criteria go back to what you want accomplished in the story. I want the screen to give me specific options and offer me specific functionality. And specific is the keyword here. The user should be able to page through ideas in groups. The user should see the title, description, and associated tags. And each idea should have a way for the user to navigate to a more detailed view of the idea. And I also want links to the edit screen and to the delete screen. This gives me a clear and complete picture of the functionality that this screen should provide. The next user story is for creating new ideas. As a registered user, I want to add new ideas to my list so I can use this app as my system of record. I'll again add the acceptance criteria area below the comments. And again, we want to focus on what we want the screen to achieve. The user should be able to save new ideas and have them persisted to a data store. Validation should prevent the user from saving ideas in an invalid state. Error messages should be shown to the user pointing to the validation issues. And the user should be able to manage, which is add and remove, the tags they want associated to the idea. That's really all there is to it. Take your time, sit down when you have some free time, and just write one story at a time until they're done. You don't have to do them all in one go, though. Just stay ahead of development. I typically go module by module. It helps me to group related stories to make sure I have a complete picture of what the expectation in each module is. Just do each step, and it'll be second nature in no time. Now for the weekly devlog. I did finish my February project, thankfully. It was a pretty serious push on the last day of the month, but it's done. I'll do a quick demo of the evaluation module. I've already demoed the other modules in my last video, and I don't want to bore you. I learned a few lessons from this one, mostly around scope creep and just not taking on more than you can handle. I've had to learn that one a few times before, so a refresher never hurts, but it did sting a bit to have to go through that class again. It also reminded me how fun Pocket Base is to use. I haven't started hosting it yet, but I will. There's really 2 good choices that I know of for hosting it. Pocket Host and Fly.io. Both are fairly cheap and well regarded in the community. And I now consider this app to be feature complete. There's a few items I'd like to enhance, a few bits of functionality that didn't make it into the MVP, like reporting. And there's a few items that I want to go back and change, but I'll add them to my backlog and start knocking them out. So February's done, so is my project, and we'll pick up with my March project, which I haven't actually decided on yet. I have some vague ideas, but nothing concrete. I hope this video was useful to new developers and those using AI to generate their application. Breaking down a product into manageable chunks is sometimes seen as a black box, but it doesn't have to be that way. Just approach it systematically. And until next time, happy coding.